5 minutes left with UK member of the EU Parliament, Nigel Farage. By the way, the Liberty movement, I was just talking to him during the break, is exploding all over Europe, and not just England. Their party is expanding. Back on May 6th of last year, a horrible, devastating plane crash. The pilot barely survived. Nigel was torn up really bad, but he's back. I tell you, talk about stiff upper lip. Nigel, finishing up with the terror card. They've said, yes, we're bombarding Gaddafi and blowing up infrastructure, and if he fights back in any way, it's terrorism. And they're talking about that legitimizing a ground invasion if there's any type of terror attack. I wonder if some groups might allow crazies to do something or might open the door. Who knows?
Well, they do seem to be very keen to put in ground troops, don't they?
Yes.
You know, I mean, we've already had the SAS there for some time. That we know for a fact. We've got the British Royal Marines getting ready to go. You've got a Corps getting ready to go. It's almost as if our governments are looking for an excuse to put in ground troops. And I think, you know, I really feel that we have got to put pressure on our politicians, real pressure on our politicians. And I think if there's any prospect of some major escalation of us getting involved in a huge conflict across the Middle East, we got to take to the streets. We got to take to the streets, millions of us, and we've got to march, and we've got to say, not in my name. We do not give consent for endless war and endless conflict, especially because whether it's, you know, Al-Qaeda and the rebels or Gaddafi, I mean, they may both be as bad as each other, and clearly it's not in our national interest to get involved in these conflicts.
Well, we're now hearing from Obama and others that this is a great moment for globalism, for the New World Order, where the UN gives the orders and our militaries go in. I mean, is this not more of this expansion of undemocratic power, similar to how the EU runs England?
Yes, it is a classic case of what we call the beneficial crisis. Whenever there's a crisis, it's used by big government, it's used by supranational global government as an excuse to say, look, we're doing the right thing, and to take more powers and to further rob us of our democracy. This, perhaps what is happening now, looks like the most extreme example of it that we've had to date, and we've got to resist. We've got, as I said earlier, we've got to take to the streets. We've got to withdraw our democratic consent from politicians who are not prepared to stand up and fight this.
Well, notice a few weeks ago, Obama didn't even want to give a speech or comment on Libya, and they reported that he had to give this speech last night, and that it was, quote, a hard sell because people aren't for it. Then I saw a Reuters poll claiming that 60+% supported it, but then I read the poll. It just asked, you know, what option you thought they should use in war. It didn't even let people have a decision to say no.
Yeah, well, as I say, overnight in Britain, there's a poll out being conducted by one of our TV channels showing that 7 out of 10 people in Britain are deeply worried and want no further escalation. And I would reckon that's a pretty accurate opinion poll amongst ordinary people. Sadly, amongst our so-called mainstream media and politicians, that message hasn't yet got through. It's got to.
Now, Nigel, I want to put on screen for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers, for radio listeners, they can just search the term Herman von Rompuy, Muammar Gaddafi, and they'll see the photos of the hugging and the shaking hands and the rest of it. But politicians in England and other countries that were cozy to Hitler early on, they were excoriated and removed or just resigned. But we're not seeing resignations by Labour Party that's been lavishing Gaddafi in England. We're not seeing any of these EU pimps like Sarkozy or Rompuy stepping down. In fact, they're grandstanding and quite proud of the fact that just months ago they were lip-locked with him. I mean, are you calling for them to resign?
I am, of course I am. I mean, I think their hypocrisy beggars belief. But, you know, sometimes these things take a bit longer. I mean, your comment about Hitler is, of course, right. I mean, virtually the entire upper class of Britain were taken in by Hitler, thought he was absolutely wonderful. The BBC thought he was terrific. Our king even went to visit him. Our parliament thought he was wonderful. And Churchill, Winston Churchill, and about 20 backbench members of Parliament were derided as being insane, eccentric, warmongers. In the end, they were right, and in the end, the bad guys lost their jobs. And I think the same is going to happen again. It just may take a little bit longer than we'd like.
Well, the comparison is certainly there. I mean, if they're going to say Gaddafi's this devil, but then be prancing around with him just months ago.
Yeah.
They need to resign. I mean, this is outrageous.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is sickening hypocrisy in every way. At the moment, they are being allowed to get away with it. And I look at our mainstream news channels across here, and nobody is asking the right questions. It's all being presented on our TV screens as if we're doing some wonderful social good. The rebels are the good guys, Gaddafi's the bad guy. As we've learned today, it isn't as simple as that. And again, to get change, we've got to be prepared to stand up and shout.
Absolutely. UKIP.org. Nigel Farage, member of European Parliament. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll be back, folks. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.